Joanne Hayes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I stand to take a short call on this bill, Mr Speaker. And it's quite interesting. I can put my hand on my heart and say that the treaty was not signed where I was brought up. I didn't live there. I lived in a little place called Rangiwahia, and at that time we didn't know a lot about the treaty. But let's take a little bit of look at the history of how the treaty got here. And it was that great-grandmother over there in England that actually brought that treaty through her representative Hobson. And when we start to look at it, what the member Marama Fox is trying to do here, and getting the principles of the treaty, or getting people to swear to the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, we need to start looking at what those principles are and how they play out with every individual person. Let's start within this House, because what partnership means to me is very different to some of my colleagues. It means very different things to different people. And how do we judge that? How do you judge that when somebody swears in their oath to that particular principle? Who judges it? And who will critique that? How will we know that we have done this in the duties that we're swearing to? Because, Mr Speaker, I believe that we already do that. We don't need to swear that. That goes with the principle of protection and, Mr Speaker, the principle of participation, because we do that. Look at the number of treaty bills that have been signed through this government, 54 since 2009, a total of 80 treaty bills that have gone through here. As my colleague Nuk Korako so eloquently put it in his speech, is that there is nothing in our bills that we do not consider the Treaty of Waitangi and its principles, Mr Speaker. When we start to look at all of these things around how do we know that, how do we judge it, it does put a lot of people into a precarious situation. And then there starts to be some competition about who does it better than others, because it will happen, Mr Speaker. I think there needs to be a lot more work going on, and if this particular bill is going to go forward, you need to have a lot more discussion around how it's going to be applied, what kind of standards are going to be put in place, because they will come out, regardless of what people say. You can stand in this House today and say, no, it will never happen, but it will happen. And every single one of us will be judged by it. Should this bill be passed, Mr Speaker? It is interesting that many people on the opposite have a lot to say about it, and yet have they thought about the consequences, the future consequences of what that may mean for other MPs, other representatives across various organisations that take various oaths, what that means within their duties and doing whatever it is that they are doing, Mr Speaker. Okay. So I believe that there needs to be a lot more thinking going on around this, and I can see that when we start looking, everybody's going, oh, National doesn't care, it has nothing, no good affinities with Māori, and that's rubbish. It's a lot of rubbish. We look at the principles that we have within our side of the House, Mr Speaker, is recognition of property rights and economic independence. That's what those treaty bills are all about. That's what most of the bills that involve Māori, and all of them are all about. Mr Speaker, strong, capable families and whānau. That's what this side of the House does with working with Māori and delivering the various bills and policies that we have, Mr Speaker. We start looking at cultural diversity. Once we start looking across the House, yes, New Zealand it's one of the countries that has we have a broad church of a number of cultures here in New Zealand, and every single one of those ethnicities actually acknowledge that Māori are the mana whenua. That's what they acknowledge, and they do. They uphold their treaty in their own ways, Mr Speaker. We do not need legislation around this. We do not need an oath to actually say that we support things like this, because we do it. It's the doing, not the saying. It's the doing that counts, Mr Speaker, and that's exactly what this side of the House does. We do it. We did not go down let's start talking about going down the alleyway of the foreshore and seabed. It wasn't this side. It was the other side. So we actually model what we do with Māori on this side, Mr Speaker, and I cannot support this particular bill tonight. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Tēnā koe.